Hey everybody, this is Cameron from Obnoxious and Anonymous, and today I am joined by Jamie, and we are here to talk about the 1993 Jennifer Lynch film Boxing Helena. Now, in the early 90s, a producer named Philippe Calan approached Jennifer Lynch around the time that the Laura Palmer Diary had come out, and he proposed to her to write a film, and the premise he gave her was a man so obsessed with a woman that he removes her arms and legs and keeps her in a box. And understandably, Jennifer Lynch was a little kind of put off by that idea, but it is sort of a powerful image and a powerful idea, and something you can see why a producer would approach her to do this, because obviously her being the daughter of David Lynch, who is known for taking arresting and disturbing images and making them beautiful. But her whole stance was, I don't want to do this as just a horror film, if you will. So she set about to kind of make a film that addressed a lot of personal concerns for her. There was a lot of production issues. Madonna was set to play Helena. She backed out. Kim Basinger was then cast to play the part. Not only did she back out, but she got sued by the company and ended up bankrupting her for pulling out of the film. So eventually it settled on Sherilyn Fenn getting cast in the lead role. There have been rumors that this caused a little bit of a rift because Sherilyn Fenn did not make herself available for Fire Walk with Me, and because she was busy with Mice and Men. And then when she was in Boxing Helena, obviously David Lynch was super supportive of his daughter making the film, but I've heard rumors that also caused a rift between David Lynch and Sherilyn Fenn. Maybe not, maybe those are just rumors, but anyway, the film came out in 1993. It did not go over very well. The critics, for the most part, dismissed it. It didn't make very much money at the box office. Personally, I feel like because Fire Walk with Me did not do well at the theater, because On the Air, David Lynch's TV show with Mark Frost, kind of went off the air after 3 episodes, even though they had made 7. I think this film would have been torpedoed regardless. There was something in the air at that time that people just really wanted to come down hard on the David Lynch family for whatever reason. And so Boxing Helena arrived dead on arrival. I saw it twice in the theater when it came out. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I did like it. And then, of course, I got it on video, saw it a few more times. I have a bunch of interviews that Jennifer Lynch did at the time on VH1 and CNN, and those were really illuminating interviews. I got the Laserdisc, which has been out of print for many, many years, and this has a commentary by her and a big hour-long discussion with her about the film. But it has been nearly 30 years since I've sat and watched the film from start to finish. And before we get your opinions, Jamie, I just want to say that for me, I felt this film plays better now than it did then. What seemed a bit awkward or clunky in 1993 now is, for the most part, more smoothed over. Even though Jennifer Lynch was in her early 20s when she made this movie, I do think that it's more understandable from an older person's point of view than when you're 16. I think there are themes. I think you can understand, you can get the gist of it, but I don't think you can quite understand what this movie is truly getting into and saying without having some sort of life experience. So on that note, before we get into specifics, and so obviously we are going to get into spoiler territory. So if you've not seen it, check it out. It is a very hard film to track down now. Like I said, I have the Laserdisc, but we had to go through some bootleg sites in order to see it anywhere streaming. You can't. I don't think you can find it anywhere. No. There are 3 cuts of it. There's the R-rated theatrical cut. There's an unrated cut that was on DVD, and then there's the director's cut, which is on the Laserdisc. And the only difference between that is there is a one voiceover narration that is removed in the director's cut, which is actually the final line of the movie. But all right, now that I have done a long-winded kind of thing. Jamie, overall, what did you think of Boxing Helena?
So I first saw this movie. I had that movie club when I was in college. This was one of the movies that we watched. Um, I had always been interested in seeing it because, Lynch supporter. Loved the Diary of Laura Palmer, so I was obviously very interested in what Jennifer Lynch was going to do and produce as a creator, especially given the types of subjects she tackled in the Diary of Laura Palmer. Um, I know that a lot of people hated this movie, and I don't. um, I I think it could have been shorter, but we'll get into that. But overall, it's a really interesting concept. I understand what it's playing with, this weird nightmarish fairy tale parable that it's trying to that kind of tone that it's trying to maintain. I think it falters in a couple of key places, and there's some story gripes that I have. But I don't think that it deserves the hate that it got. But I'm not going to be pounding down the door to watch this again. I would love to see it with her commentary, though. I would be very interested in hearing her perspective on the story, because I'd also be interested in hearing what she thinks of it now, because I think that it hits different now. And it hits me differently now as a woman who has 30 more years of experience than I did when I first saw it.
I do have, little gripes with it. They're small though. I do think that this comes across at times like a very young person wrote this.
Yes.
I think that she was tapping into stuff that I don't think she quite realized what she was. Maybe I think she understood it to a certain degree, but sometimes when you look back and you go, "Oh, that's what I was doing. That's what I was
Right.
thinking." Um,
Right.
Again, we're talking spoilers here, so if you have not seen it, check it out. I know one of the biggest problems that people had at the time, and probably people have overall, and I really don't have a problem with this. Is one of the few films where I don't have a problem with the fact from the midsection on is a dream. Usually, I hate films like that. I think it's a cheat. Would I have preferred the movie to just be the straightforward story it's telling all the way through? Probably. That being said, it's not like it's a dream and everything's okay. The movie still it leaves you in a state of anxiety. I like that. I like that we're left with a bunch of images and questions, and I think the last 5 minutes is really killer in terms of the visuals. Like there's a lot of
Yeah,
really
the
cool.
visuals in those last 5 minutes. There's some really stunning visuals in this.
Right.
Like there are
But I mean, she
several.
really, for a
I
film
even
that
see a
seemed
couple sketches.
for a film that feels very conventional in a lot of the photography throughout the movie,
Hmm.
those last 5 minutes really ratcheted it up, right? There's some really stunning moments. So it's just like, so that leaves you in a solid place as well. Another thing that people had problems with when the first came out and was because for a long time, again, we're not trying to compare her with her dad, but her dad would choose actors like Kyle MacLachlan or Nicolas Cage, conventional leading men, but kind of like with a twist, right? I think it was kind of it was a definite choice to cast Julian Sands. Her
Right.
original choice was Ed Harris, and I think that that may have been too. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that.
I but like at the time, Julian Sands was known for uh, uh, gothic
Warlock,
and
right?
warlock, Room with a View, but kind of
Yeah.
like these like sensitive, quiet men, and to cast him in this part, I remember at the time people just couldn't relate to him. They couldn't understand him. They felt like
It's
it
one of
was
my
kind of a
notes.
it's kind of a at times it's subtle, but other times it's over the top kind of a performance. But I think his performance actually is one of the things that has aged well. compared to when it came. I mean, not that I didn't like it then, but now I feel like it's aged better in the world of the internet incel kind of boys.
Yeah, I can see that. I can tell you the group of people I saw this with in the 90s, we laughed a lot at some of the moments because it was a combination of the script and the acting choices and the fact that, we were a bunch of 20-year-olds watching this movie together. So that's a set and setting that's pretty exclusive, right? I think now his performance feels a little bit truer. It feels more like I've talked to that person online. I could see this person existing. I think that the 30 years has certainly given us much more perspective on that kind of community, and he sort of rings like that. I wanted to go back to what you said about the dream. I'm kind of 50-50 on whether or not I'm cool with it. On the one hand, it makes sense. And I liked the imagery that they were able to get out of the fact that it was a dream. I liked him waking up and holding on to the statue, which was like the only thing he could possess. I liked all of that. I thought that all of that was exceptional. My one problem with it was if you're doing a movie that's supposedly a critique of the male gaze, I don't see how he paid consequences, and yet she's still in the hospital. So it's just a weird choice story wise if you are going for the
I think
critique
it's.
of the male gaze. I'm just saying.
I know.
That's how I feel.
I think it's meant to just leave us perpetually kind of disturbed.
Hey, you could have done that with any ending. It's a pretty disturbing
Right.
center, you know what I mean? But the one thing that I do kind of like about it is that you do sort of hope, and all you get is hope. You don't know that the dream taught him something. That's another one of the notes is like, where is the change?
Well,
Because I haven't seen an arc here.
so this is one of the changes that was made in the director's cut. So in the theatrical cut and the unrated, at the end of the movie, he goes to the statue and he says, you hear the narration saying, "I'm still haunted by her. Those dreams, I'm still haunted by her." And that gives you the illusion like he's still kind of obsessed with Helena, even though he wakes up out of bed with Anne there, right?
Right.
That those two lines are cut out of the director's cut. So he's just kind of putting his head to the Venus de Milo, which in a way implies that
I'd prefer that.
that's what I'm saying. Because
I'd prefer that.
instead of telegraphing, "I'm still obsessed with her," it's almost like he feels a connection to this weird experience he just went through, as opposed to
Right.
just Helena.
I much prefer that. I much, much prefer that because the ending as it was pretty just like,
That's the other thing is
what
that
did we learn? We learned
that
nothing. Who grew?
Jennifer
Noah.
had it in her contract. She would not commit to making this film if it wasn't a dream. So that wasn't a studio mandate, like change the ending.
I didn't feel that it was.
No, but I find that interesting considering that her dad at this point in his career is known for
Dream work.
Is it real? Is it a dream? Is it, and she was very insistent of like, this is going to be a dream. Not the whole movie, just the second
And
half.
it definitely throws big hints that it's a dream. Like you get some big hints in there that there's something really not quite right. Everything feels a little off. It feels a bit like dream logic. You have her arms that appear and they go away. Like I definitely.
And her at the end screaming, "Nick, wake up, wake up."
Yeah, like there are, but I mean, I don't mean just at the end, because part of it is I don't want to feel like I've been tricked for an hour and 45-minute movie that the story could have been told in much faster clip. Like I understand the choices made. I'm saying like I feel better with it being a dream if he grew from having it. I felt much more uncomfortable with him still coming out of this whole entire experience, again, having learned nothing, because, we're spending a lot of time with people who are not crazy, likable people. I mean, Helena's not a super likable person.
This is one of the great things that Jennifer Lynch brought to the film. Everybody is ghosting somebody. Everybody is like rude to the person they love, right?
Sure.
And like it would be one thing if like Nick, played by Julian Sands, just like saw Helena from afar, became obsessed with her in that kind of, you know, like we said, that stalkery incel, you know, Twitter boy kind of way. But Jennifer Lynch mixes it up. Like before the movie even begins, we find out they had a one night stand together. She is so mean to him for obvious reasons, but then she's also mean to Bill Paxton too. So she's not like this likable person who is only mean to the person who is like obsessed with her. Like she treats everybody like that. This is really mixing it up so that you can't just read the film in one way. It's very much like a chamber play. You know, we're dealing with Bill Paxton, we're dealing with Anne's character, who is Nick's like kind of estranged girlfriend. These are very unloved, unhappy individuals that all collide in this like little movie. And
Sure. And that's difficult as a viewer to attach to one of them because they're not very likable.
what do you think of Sherilyn Fenn in this movie?
I think that she did a really good job with what with some of what she had. I think what's difficult is to figure out exactly how to play the armless, legless person. You know, like when I liked the level of ire she could bring to her lines. You know, she was very good at establishing that Helena was not a nice or kind person, that right when you thought that she was being kind, she was actually bringing you in to be cruel, that she was completely disregarding of the people around her. Sherilyn Fenn did a really great job with that part. What she does have problems though is playing the victim after she has been victimized. I was expecting a little bit more vulnerability in some of the delivery that she gave, but still, you know, yeah, physically she was doing great. Do you know what I mean? Like
I think
it
that
had to have been a difficult role to play.
I think that her and Jennifer were so intent on making sure that she didn't ever come across as the victim that maybe they missed.
They went too far.
They sometimes they missed a beat or two.
My problem is because she plays it so strong, it makes it harder to believe, which I guess makes it okay since it's all in a dream.
Well, that's
and
what I'm
this
saying.
is his version of her.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But
If it's
then
a
what's
dream,
the point? What's the center conceit then? Because if your center conceit is I'm going to deconstruct the male gaze, and then you're going to use the entire movie sunk into it, at what point do you elevate your content enough to win that, to be able to do that? Do you know what I mean?
well,
I think that's why it's not a great movie to me. It's okay.
Well, what I'm saying is like he, in his dream, he's thinking that her in this predicament, she's gonna love him, and she just rejects him over and over and over. And that is Nick's psyche saying this, you know, this like she's never gonna let you in. I think that the film really could have benefited from a little bit more insight into his mom, because we just get these like fleeting little surreal images of her mostly naked, implying that she's like some sort of like prostitute in this house while his dad's working.
He was neglected. Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
His emotional needs were neglected, obviously neglected.
But I think
and it's difficult to grow up with a promiscuous mother and a distant father. These are
but I think
serial killer traits.
I think well, that's the thing. So I think if they had put maybe 5-10 more minutes into that, it would give us a little more insight as to why he was so obsessed with trying to get Helena to like him.
They've got like 20 some minutes I can think of just off the top of my head that they could have plucked out and maybe replaced with some of those scenes to give it just a little bit more depth on those connections for him. Because I mean, I could see them there. I'm not stupid. I don't have to be, you know, led directly to a conclusion. But again, I think that some of the more strident comments the film are trying to make just aren't earned with the way it was put together, and I think that it's just young, and
I think if she made this film today, it would be a different movie.
oh yeah, yeah, and I would I would love to see her like recut this movie. I would see a different cut of it even, because I think that there's a lot of potential. The story is really intriguing and upsetting, and really kind of just really incisive commentary on obsession and the cost of obsession. I just think that maybe a couple of different choices might have led it into some more interesting and more provocative turf.
Like there's that moment of him after he sees her in the window and he's running, and it's right, and it's also, and then we get those like huge shots of Sherilyn Fenn and all that. I would
With the candelabra, yeah, yeah.
I would have cut from him looking at the window to him writing the note for the flowers, and cut the whole
Yeah.
jogging scene, because I think that for some people it plays wrong when he's like, ugh.
It also makes the fact that he can't catch her when she runs away from him kind of ridiculous.
I mean, definitely another thing about being a young screenwriter is the fact that Nick's this like very wealthy surgeon. Helena has this beautiful apartment, and yet they all shop at the same little mini market.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's definitely something you do in a low budget film when you're 19 or 20, making a film. It's like, we'll just have them all at the same market. It's like that poor guy running the market. It's always like ordering vodka and roses and
right. And pomegranates and lime juice.
Yeah.
This poor guy.
Listen, the person who walks into this film like they even, I mean, like, in a great way. Like, what movie is Bill Paxton in? Like, he is out of control in this movie, but he plays the douchebag so well. But and again, I love him in this movie. He definitely adds character and liveliness to the
thank God for him. At the end, somebody cares about Helena. Oh my God!
But he's in a different movie than the movie we're watching.
He is not in the same movie. Yeah,
but in a great way, it works.
Yeah, actually, I really like him. First of all, I really like Bill Paxton.
Yeah.
Second of all, I really kind of liked him in this. If you're gonna have a black leather pant wearing guy named Ray, Bill Paxton.
But just the way he's just like
his hair, hilarious.
He's like
I'm gonna
go. I want to see you
at the club. I want to like go. He's just in a different space. Yeah, and that was in the real world, right?
I haven't read the script. I can imagine it saying he turns to Helena when she's in the box and sees her. But what he does is he does a double take. He looks at her and then he turns back to Nick, and then he does the slow turn back to look at her.
Yeah,
and it's that slow turn back that I remember both times in the theater, the audience reacting, and I think that was a very smart move. I almost wish, and just in that moment, I almost wish that had been our first realization of Helena in the box.
That was really his reaction to her, and then her reaction to him seeing her and her looking away. That was some of the best acting in the whole thing. Just those two playing off of each other in that moment was just like really reminds you what the stakes are in that scene. Really brings a level of realism and kind of heartbreak. You feel exceptionally. I think that's the first time where I was like, oh man, Helena, you poor girl, because she does come off really super hateful in a lot of her scenes, which is intentional. I understand.
So if you were writing this, would you have her have just these that's kind of angered towards Nick only, and then have her be sort of more layered with everybody else? Because as written, I was thinking while I was watching it, I was like, I never realized how angry of a movie this is. Like
Mhm.
this
There's
is
a lot of rage in here.
like, they say on the I read on the internet about female rage. I never
Mhm.
quite like thought of this movie in this way until I was watching it this morning and thinking there's a lot of female rage in this movie. There's a lot of
Mhm.
anger towards not just men, but women too. Like
Mhm.
everybody, even poor Anne, Nick's girlfriend.
Nobody
They're
gets a break in this one.
She's blowing out the candles. She doesn't even show up for the dinner. But then like she I was thinking, oh, he's gonna get back from jogging, she's gonna be gone. No, she's laying on the couch. Like
Yep.
everybody is so needy and lonely and sad and tragic in this movie. That's why I kind of think of this as sort of a chamber play, because it's all of a theme. Everybody's going through the same stuff, just with a different person in in
And
the
that's a young writer. That's somebody
But I
who
didn't think it
doesn't
was bad.
have.
I didn't think it was bad though. Much like people talk about Fire Walk with Me now, I think that society is kind of caught up to what she was kind of talking about.
That's something big. She was talking about something, and she was using a visual language to talk about that thing far before other people started talking about that. Like this movie, its subject matter, its pretense, what it's about, in the underneath. It's very modern in what it's talking about, because we're still facing the same issues. They haven't really gone away. It's something that, especially at that time, um, it was coming a lot amongst women, talking about this sort of thing, men's obsession, where it takes us to. I mean, it's a big danger point for women. So yeah, I think that she was aware of the subject matter she was tackling. What I would love to see her do is look at this again, now with a bit more experience and years. I wonder how she would tell this sort of story again, because there are some. I just think that there are places where she could really, really tighten the tail and make it more of that awkward and convenient fairy tale morality play that she was going for. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'll even go a step further. I think that this should be tackled as sort of a 6 to 8 episode streaming series. Because I
Yeah,
think you
like
could,
it's got potential. Like, and a lot of it is like, I would like to see this have more time. I would like to see this have less time. I'd like to explore this more. Don't need all of that. Um, there's so much potential, and it's interesting. Like, it's an interesting concept. It is a very angry movie. This reads to me
yeah.
as a movie of somebody who's just realized what their lot in life is going to be, and they're going to rage against it, and they're going to do everything to fight it in the best way that they know how.
I don't remember this movie. Again, it might be just because I was 16. I don't remember this movie feeling as angry as it does today. It feels there's something about the current zeitgeist that informs this material more through this lens of
Sure.
today, that you can kind of go back and say, oh, that's what she was doing.
Right. But that speaks a lot to how women feel about men sometimes. Like, what do you want from us? Do you want us to just be a legless, armless woman in a box so that you can only interact with us when you need us? Like, I do understand Helena has some of these what were traditionally considered masculine characteristics. I just think that in some cases, um, Helena's likability and vulnerability, which is important for people to connect to, was sacrificed for her supposed strength and bitterness.
Obviously, people have seen the film if they're watching this, hopefully. But
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
hope so.
they,
I hope that's not a spoiler
but
of
if
a
you tell
30-year-old
somebody
movie.
the story, they think it's going to be this totally bloody, gory story, and it's not.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. I mean, it's horrific in the way that,
But there's no
there's a different horror going on.
but there's no blood. Some of the shot choices and some of the editing of this film is just to die for. Some of the slow motion is some of the best I've ever seen in a movie. Some of those cutaway shots of just like the shots of like Sherilyn Fenn and how it would like just fade up into blackness and then fade back in, and or like, you know, going from her eye to the bird. I understand like these might be, you know, film schooly type of shots, but they kind of work for me because the whole thing is about this obsession. So we should feel kind of this sort of obsessive kind of feeling at times.
I liked the kind of bower of flowers above her bed. Like the imagery
Mhm.
in the hospital was really great. I really liked that scene where he hears everything from his dream and kind of gets haunted by his dreams. Really dug that. It's like,
Well,
yeah, that's good.
let's give a big shout out to that location. His house is stunning.
Yeah, his house is beautiful. I have a drawing of the wrought iron because I liked the patterns of the wrought iron. The gardens were beautiful. Was that in Atlanta? Is that where they filmed it?
Yeah, but I mean, like one of the things they bring up in the interview on the Laserdisc is they said, you know, this isn't like he's got her in a dungeon like Silence of the
No,
Lambs.
she's in a beautiful place. Like she's surrounded by flowers. He's treating her like a goddess. Like he's not, this isn't seedy. He's not like stashed her away under the bed like in the X-Files episode Home.
Or Annie Wilkes in Misery.
In Misery, he's like, this is more Pygmalion and a celebration of this impossible form that he has molded and created than it is him denigrating her. That's not, he wants to take care of her. He says it plenty.
But
She's in a beautiful place, obviously being fed, like on this really nice.
The more he showers her with stuff, the ruder she becomes,
the angrier she becomes. Because I mean, because the whole like, if you love me, stop hurting me, you asshole. Like that's the like, because one of the things about victimization in relationships, a lot of times what happens, the person will do something, they'll hit you or something and then bring you flowers. Oh, I'm sorry. And what you really want to say to them is, if you're really sorry, if you really love me, stop hitting me. I don't want your stupid flowers. And that's what I really got from her performance and what they were saying. That rang pretty great for me. Actually, I liked that she was like, you're not understanding me. For somebody who claims to love me, you're not listening to the words coming out of my face.
So what would you have done differently with her character to add the vulnerability that you are saying is a little missed? Because I have to say, she is angry from pretty much start to finish, except for when she's talking to the guy at the market and ordering her food, or figuring out who her next one night stand is going to be, Russell at the party and stuff like that.
Maybe a couple of moments with her in a quiet moment where she's reacting post accident to her reality, where we see her process that. Mm-hmm. Because there are already things that seem out of sorts for him having a dream anyway. So why not give us just a couple moments of maybe her like laying there and crying and trying to figure out her next move, something like that, or just laying there and staring and thinking. I just didn't feel like I had enough of her outside of his interaction with her after her accident to know where her mind was exactly.
And it's funny because when Anne comes over, and Helena's trying to escape with the wheelchair, and like Anne drops her key or whatever that, and she does, and then Helena comes into the frame.
You see the frame. Yeah,
it's so strange because it's like, this is supposed to be a horrific near miss situation, but I feel like that whole scene is played as like for laughs. Like,
I definitely felt like it was being played for like comedic purposes, which also made it like surreal.
Right.
It's like, wait,
and that's what I'm saying. Like there's like when him in the tree looking into Helena's apartment, right? That kind of recalls sort of a Red Shoe Diaries version of Jeffrey in the closet in Blue Velvet watching Isabella Rossellini,
sure.
Right?
Sure.
And there's definitely a Red Shoe Diaries kind of aspect to this movie. Yes, it gets into eroticism, but it kind of feels like early 90s cable eroticism.
I feel like this was on Cinemax, yeah.
Which sometimes I feel like it works for the film. Other times I feel like this is something that if you were to revisit it, maybe this is stuff that you would find another way around.
There's a better way.
Like for instance, like the whole scene, like we don't know who this prostitute is he brings home until the end of the movie. We find out it's one of the nurses in the hospital. It's a very interesting scene. Again, it's got that whole Blue Velvet vibe with her watching it happening and all that kind of thing. It's definitely a late night Cinemax
I
type of
absolutely did
feeling.
not need that scene. Could have done it without that. Like I said, when I was watching it, I was thinking, wow, I would love to see this recut. Just I would love to see her revisit these sorts of themes. I'd love to see what her sensibilities are on telling the story now. I think that it's like I said, there's a lot of hues of Pygmalion. There's a lot of really great comments about the male gaze and misogyny, and even putting people into boxes and what we emotionally tend to do when we get into these obsessive relationships. I think that she would say it differently now.
Do you like the idea that they had a prior, one night stand prior to the movie?
Yeah, I think that actually, at least he's obsessed about somebody who, like, at least it's not just that he's just continually building this obsessive parasocial relationship that she has no concept of, that he has this thing that he's built on in his mind, that it's kind of like with his mother, where he has this fantastical mind relationship with his mother because she was his mother. He's got this fantastical mind relationship with this other woman who shares, a female face with his mother.
Well,
I understand though.
The first time we see his mother at the party, she is framed between two doors.
Right.
So there's
well, and the first time that we really see Helena, she's in little boxes. Like, she's in a paned window and there are little boxes in it. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting visual details and visual concepts that are going on.
I was thinking though that if we needed, 5 to 10 more minutes of exploring Nick's family, besides just his dad saying, not now, Nicholas, go, and then like the mom just kind of, because it gives the impression that, like, did Nick just hang out with his mom when she was naked all the time?
Right.
Not,
seeing
right.
Other men.
Right. But I mean, she's naked in a lot of his visions.
Yes.
So there's this aspect. I would like to know a little bit more about why that particular imagery. I mean, is it just the Venus de Milo kind of thing? So therefore that's why she's always naked? Or is there another aspect to it? Was there an Oedipus complex there as well? Helena is so mean to him all the time, right? You're pathetic. What it last 2 seconds.
Yeah, she was like literally emasculating to him all the time. And again, he took her arms and her legs. I get it. but
not just that.
But even before, like, she's just cruel.
But it makes me want to see. I know we get that one memory flashback of her walking to him saying, "Hi, I'm Helena." But I would like to have seen, what was their first conversation like?
What was it that sparked this?
How did did she just kind of look at him as like Ray's busy at night, easy conquest? Or was she interested in him and then she realized he was not what she wanted? Like what exact, did it fall apart because their bed tryst didn't work out? Like what exactly, why did they connect in the first place is what I'm trying to hint at. Because
I'm trying to figure out why somebody who's being played as being uninhibited and free spirit, why would she be attracted to this guy? She has also said that she has tried to tell him to leave her alone.
Right.
She's very, very clear, leave me alone.
Right.
Maybe this is a person who has tried to establish boundaries to which a man did not listen to, kept inviting her to things, kept calling her, hanging up on her, sending her flowers with little cards. And this is her, enough. You do not want me coming to your parties. You don't want me interacting with you. This is what's going to happen when you do that. I said no. Take the no.
So you think that her going to the party and getting into the fountain, and like, I love that one line, like, well, if you're gonna follow me around, carry this. I love that. Do you think that she is doing, because I was like trying to think of like, why is she even getting in the fountain? I get to understand it's like this uninhibited thing, but you think it's like, you invited me to your party, I'm gonna embarrass you in front of your guests,
So that
or
you leave me alone, because I've tried everything else and you won't leave me alone. I can't think of any other reason for a reasonable person to behave that way.
I think that's a great point. I think that's what it is. It would have been nice
If
if
she
we
said that.
or if we felt that,
Right.
because
Right.
what it feels like is, isn't this a glorious moment? Sherilyn Fenn half naked in a fountain, and the music's beautiful,
And the
and
music swells, and this is what we see for
and it,
2
and it
minutes.
right.
It could have been done in just a couple of seconds, but that was the read that, because I sat down and thought, like, okay, how could I tighten the story that I think I see? And that is how I read that scene, is that this is a woman who has tried repeatedly to establish boundaries with somebody who is obsessive with her, keeps making sure he shows up in the fringe of her, vision, keeps showing up at the seedy bar she goes to. Come on, he's a doctor. He's not going to go to the same place as she does. Not going to go to the club. That's how I kind of read
Now
the
that would have been a
scene.
scene. We should have had a scene of Nick going to the
Why
club.
didn't we get to see Ray's club?
He's
I
talking
would have
about
liked
all
to
the
see Ray's club. That's like his thing. Apparently, like, that's his thing.
Bill
He wears his
Paxton
leather pants
on the dance floor would have
with that
been
hair.
that would have
I
been
would have
great.
felt like, that would have given it like more points in my book.
You know what's really sad is, out of this chamber play, it's like Bill Paxton's character is like one of the few you actually by the end of the film feel sorry for.
Something right, where you're like, wow, this poor guy. Like, he just wanted to go to the club with his
I mean,
girlfriend.
I like Anne. I like Anne a lot, but she, just like Nick, is allowing someone to just trample all over her,
Yeah.
and she keeps
Yeah,
coming back for
she's
more.
shamelessly taking this emotional neglect from this man child who hasn't grown up with these. Just hasn't grown out of these obsessive issues. He does not understand why that is bad for him.
And she's trying to bring this sort of domesticity to his
Domesticity.
life.
Yeah, she's like, I brought you this dinner.
And Anne breaks out the saran wrap. I'm thinking, was the kitchen fully stocked from his mom still, so she found the saran wrap? Or is this guy just a no-show that she just comes with saran wrap?
She comes with saran wrap. Yeah, I want to like note, as somebody who used to run a lot, I used to be able to tell my husband how long I'd be gone for. Like, I wouldn't just
He's
go
such
for
a
a
moron,
jog.
because it wasn't just the
I would
jog.
be like, I'm going for a 5-mile run. I'll be back in an hour.
It wasn't just that. The fact that he spied on her, then he was send flowers, and then he parked outside her apartment and like fell asleep in the car.
And fell asleep in the car. Like, how long of a run does she think he's on?
They haven't found his body, but rest in peace, Julian Sands. We can only assume that he's passed away. Why cast Julian Sands in this movie? It can't just be the fact that he's an actor who's willing to do a low budget film with a first time director. Why do you cast him as your lead in this film? This is a hard role to play, as evidenced by people's reaction to this film.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think while I liked him at the time, I did think it was an unorthodox choice. I still do. Although I do think his performance has aged better. Although I wonder if that's also because I've seen him in more stuff now, so I'm used to Julian Sands.
Right, right. There are a couple line deliveries that are a little too much. Little too much vulnerability from him, little too less vulnerability from Sherilyn Fenn. Maybe if they swapped a little bit on that emotional. Yeah, it's an interesting casting choice, but I think that the reason that Julian Sands was cast is because, he's not a physically imposing or threatening man, which I think was important to this role. They didn't want somebody who could physically beat Helena. They wanted somebody who could disfigure her and dismember her using his smarts, using his mind. The same thing that obsesses about her.
You said she emasculates him in the movie. He appears impotent, emasculated from frame 1 of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's a moment where Helena says, I know you now, Nick. I know I know your desires, your wants, I know I can hear you in the other room crying and stuff. I I would have preferred if maybe she had like found like his mom's diary and like read about how much his mom hated him. And so then she was kind of using that, like it almost seems like she's employing techniques that his mom would do. Or is it the idea of like this,
Women often placate men in order to get away from them. That's often the only thing that we get to do. We can't physically overpower you.
so do you
This
get
is
the
just a tool. Like, that's what women sometimes have to do to get out of a bad situation is calm their captor down, comfort him, and then leave as soon as he goes to sleep. So yeah, this is something that women know. It's not intuition, it's something that we have to know. Sucks.
Do you think there should have been a connection more between Helena and his mom more than just in his mind? Do you think that maybe I was thinking like it would have given more insight into Helena too if she was finding out things about Nick's life. I don't know.
I would have liked it if there was some indication as to why, again, why her? Why his mom was blonde, she's got dark hair, facially kind of similar, but other than that, I would really like more connection other than
Is it just because
boobs.
she's rude to him that he's like, "Oh, you're like my mom"? I
We're
I
not
can't
given
believe
enough,
I can't
So
believe that
like again, that's why I'm questioning why I'm literally not given enough to
I
know.
can't believe that Helena was the first woman to ever be rude to him.
Yeah, I cannot believe that. He just reads as somebody who like this is something that he does repeatedly. He has not learned appropriate boundary setting with women. He does not understand no, he does not understand I don't want that. Those aren't things like in his lexicon. So I don't, yeah.
The choice of writing it so that Nick has a girlfriend, has a life, has a career, has friends that show up to this party, and Helena has nobody. The way it's portrayed, let's say now on the internet, is that the guy's living alone in mom's basement.
Right.
So this
He's
guy,
living alone in mom's upper house.
well, yeah, he's living. He's got the whole estate, right?
Still living in mom's house.
He is still living in mom's house, but he has this. He has a. I mean, and again, you don't really see him interacting with people at the party, but
Right.
obviously people do come to the
He has,
party.
and he had that big list of friends. Like there were, 20, at least a dozen names on that list. Lots of people there.
And I get it. Like you could have it so like a character like Anne would be like, "Hey Nick, I really like to go out with you," and him like, not really interested. But he's already in a relationship with Anne, so you
Right.
can't just say that he's just kind of this,
I like the choice. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Here's why I like the choice. So I like the choice for him having friends and people surrounding him because those are the things that are at stake for him. You see these start to fall away as he becomes deeper and deeper into his obsession. It's an important marker for us as the audience to understand all of the layers he's willing to strip away in order to keep possession of this object that he desires. I think that that's important. I think it's important narratively for Helena to be alone because you need some way to not have people coming after her. Like that's the big thing that you worry about if you write of some kind of kidnapping, right? Somebody's going to notice this person's gone. Who's going to notice? And the way that they kind of, talked about that is the flowers and Bill Paxton and all that stuff. I liked that choice to separate her from her family, from friends, from people who could be concerned. I think it spoke to her being a difficult woman, which is definitely something that lots of weird young ladies would have been told they were at the time. I know I was called a difficult young woman. And there's some societal ostracization if you are uninhibited, if you do just do things of your own interest and you don't try to like just hook up and attach to a guy. I think that those were smart choices narratively, as well as trying to establish her character as somebody who, isn't really able or willing to commit or get close to men. Because I think that's kind of what is being said there, right?
Right. So there's a moment in the film where Julian Sands is sitting on the floor and he's kind of like looking over. I think it was like just some of Sherilyn Fenn's pictures from her
Yes.
modeling
He's
days,
got
right?
all of her pictures, yeah, from her modeling
So
days.
that's giving us the feeling that like, or the illusion that like she's a model. That's how she can afford this apartment. You would think though that she would have photographer friends that would notice that she was gone.
Yeah, somebody. But like me, it's a dream, so
Is
they
that's
just
true,
need enough hand waving to get you through to the point where you find out it's a dream.
right? Because in real life, she got run over by the car,
Mm-hmm.
and then she's in the hospital.
Right. Right.
Okay, right,
Yeah, because in real life, because like it's all in his head. Like in
right,
his head, she has no one. That's not really real. Like she has a boyfriend. She has the dude at the market that she talks to. Like this is his dream. So in
right,
his
right,
head,
right.
he's isolating her, which is
Okay,
definitely a thing that people do. But
right.
yeah, like it's really weird because I'm like, I understand why it had to be a dream. I just think that that takes away the consequences for him and lays
But
them
in,
all on
but
her.
until the last 5 minutes, we're not aware it's a dream, right? So
Correct.
that's what I'm saying. So when you're just
So
watching
we
the
got to
movie,
read it as straight.
the first time you watch this movie, you have to wonder, doesn't anybody realize Helena is gone? You know, she obviously has money that she can just say on a whim, I'm going to
I'm going to
Mexico in
go
the morning.
Mexico. Right.
Oh, we're off to a party and then we're going to Mexico.
I really liked Bill Paxton in this.
All
He was
right.
really funny.
Music choices in this film. What'd you think?
Uh, so very, very of the time.
See, this
I
is the
thought also the score that was
yeah.
underlying some of the pieces felt a little like Angelo.
She doesn't want to go near Angelo because obviously that's her dad's
Right.
thing, right?
Of course. Of course. Of course.
So the music choices she makes definitely puts it into that early 90s vibe, right? But some of the song choices, like I Can't Make You Love Me, and
Woman
I
in
get it,
Chains.
right?
That was great.
Woman in Chains, right? Um, the Enigma music,
Mm-hmm.
great
Nessun
stuff.
Dorma. I was like,
Oh yeah,
Nessun
there it
Dorma.
is. And this Pavarotti, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
but like, yeah, it definitely puts it into that early 90s vibe. If
Mhm.
she had gone with Angelo, not that if it was ever on the table or not, I think that the film would have felt more timeless in terms of the music choices then. But it's
Yeah,
very
it was definitely 90s. It definitely felt like something like that I would have caught late night on Cinemax. Like,
Do you think this film could be the film as it is recut so that it plays better overall, or do you think
yes.
that this material
Uninhibited, yes.
would just
I think that
need
it could be recut.
okay? Because I was thinking maybe some of the things we're suggesting would be a second attempt at making this film.
Yeah, I think I would love to see it reimagined. Modern. I would love to see Jennifer Lynch do it. Actually, I would love to see this story told twice by the same filmmaker in the same lifetime, just to see how far we've come as a society. Because I do think that the messages and the things that she's talking about are super important. But I do also see that there is great potential in the movie that we have to be recut into something with a little bit more bite that feels more modern. Just by removing a couple things, maybe rearranging a couple of things. There's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of interesting things here, and there is something really important being said. And of course, if it was to be recut, when he wakes up, he needs to not say that he's still obsessed with her.
Well, that's in the director's cut already.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah.
Like I think that that's really key, because I think that's one of the things that just didn't sit well, that made people say, well, why did I even watch all of this then? Because nobody's learned anything and nobody's grown and nothing's happened.
What do you think of Art Garfunkel showing up in this movie? I think it's he's
He
great.
did really well. He was really believable, gave a good performance, pretty naturalistic. I didn't think that he was like,
Well, that's the
well,
thing.
he
It's
was
like
great job.
he's not asked to do a lot, but I kind of like him as
He delivers.
the friend.
Yeah, I like him as the friend who's like, what is with you, man? I dig it. I liked that. I was
Right.
very, very like, wow, Art Garfunkel, let's see what he brings. Like, no, he did great.
If it had been Art Garfunkel and Ed Harris, I think it would have been like, hey, do you need anything? Let me know. Whereas like I felt like Garfunkel with Julian Sands, he kind of played it as like his friend, but also like Julian Sands was a kid he had to take care of.
Oh, I very much saw Art Garfunkel as being like the father friend.
Yes.
You know, like one of those people who have troubled relationships with their father. They just always become friends with this one guy because he's very fatherly, gives advice, is always checking up on him. That's the read that I got on Art Garfunkel, to the point where like Julian Sands even gives him her purse. So like obviously Nick's character is like, yeah, this guy is my guy. He's always got my back. He's always going to take care of me. And I thought that Art Garfunkel really did a great job of bringing that kind of fatherly, paternal
Right.
energy to that role.
Kurtwood Smith showing up.
Liked him.
I've always liked him, but you know, I think it's funny. It's like when you're 16 years old, you've seen RoboCop with this guy. This is before he
Right.
was in
This
70s
was
show.
before that 70s show. Yeah. This
so
is
you're thinking-
RoboCop guy.
So you're thinking this guy's going to be kind of a tough, kind of no nonsense kind of, and it's very quiet. It's very low key. And I think that's another performance I think that's aged the best, because
His understated performance
yes,
does him credit.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
At the time, it felt like, oh, what a lackluster thing. It's like he's in the movie, then he's not. But it's like now you watch and you go, so you will give me the recommendation, and I wasn't here. Like you can really feel like he's torn.
Yeah, you can tell that he's torn because he really wants the job, but OMG,
Yeah.
look at what this guy has done. I think that him choosing the understated delivery and just his whole entire body language was really great as somebody who is put into a bad situation and kind of under Nick. I really liked him, being the one to have operated on her at the end. You're kind of like, oh, I wouldn't want to think of what Julian Sands would have done with her body while it was, unconscious. So that was great.
So, like I said, I saw this twice in the theater. Not many people were there. I'm glad I saw it on the big screen. I would say if you're at a Lynch retrospective now and they're showing Box Helena, watch it, because it's one of the few ways you can actually see it now if you can't find the DVD. The movie only made less than $2 million, didn't even cover marketing. But
sucks.
I think
it didn't deserve a reception like that.
No. I think if this film had been made today, if Jennifer Lynch was 1920 and made Boxing Helena today, same movie, no changes, I think it does better on streaming than it would have in the theaters.
Yeah, I think it would do much better on streaming than it would in the theaters.
Boxing Helena, people just kind of grabbed a jacket and left.
And that's one of the comments that I had, is like, in its current form, unfortunately, it just feels like too little story for too much time. That's why I think some judicious cutting, some smart cutting would make it into a stronger story with a bit more punch.
I think the version we have is pretty good, pretty solid, and I think it works better now, 30 years later, at home than in 1993 in a movie theater. I think that, for sure. I think that the themes she's talking about, I think the performances have aged better. I didn't think they were bad at the time, but I think that they've, even though you can have quibbles about this and that, like, oh, there should be maybe a little more vulnerability here, or a little less here.
They're quibbles. That's all they are.
But I think they've aged better.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh yeah,
Sherilyn Fenn back in 1993 was like, wow, she's just a very angry person even before her limbs are touched. Now in 2023, you're looking at it from a female rage perception. It's a whole different thing. It wasn't even, as far as I was aware of, I didn't even hear that as part of the conversation back in 1993. Right. When you look at it through a modern lens, it's like, oh, this actually is ringing more truthful now than it did at the time.
That's the thing. I'm sure that a lot of people just dismiss this as just hyperbolic. Looked at the themes and like, I
think it also was her. They said, oh, she's just trying to be her dad.
Right. Which I don't. I obviously I see influences of her father in her work, but it's David Lynch. And she's telling a story that has horrific elements, that have a erotic element to it, like
a beauty element to it.
Right.
But
But I don't think of her work as being a derivative form of hers any more than just being informed by her dad's, which his work informs a lot of people's
if her
directorial
dad
sensibilities.
if her dad had made this film, it's a completely different movie.
It's a completely different movie. First of all, the plot would not be so straightforward.
Right.
I mean, literally, when you look on Wikipedia, the plot is summarized in like 4 sentences.
And and
Um,
and and that's not saying that like Lynch can't do straightforward. We've seen the straight story.
the
Blue
straight
Vel-
story is
Blue
is
Velvet.
yeah, Blue Velvet is Lynch being straightforward. I think that Lynch is ultimately very straightforward in a lot of the stories he tells. He has his own language that a lot of people just aren't tuned into,
I
which is
think
fine.
if I think if David Lynch, and I don't mean like David Lynch takes his daughter's screenplay and directs it. I mean if David Lynch got this
Took the
idea,
story.
took the
Yeah.
concept, a man who removes a woman's arms,
Caught the
legs,
big
keeps her in a
fish,
box,
right.
and that was his story. This movie would be more violent,
Oh yeah.
right?
There'd be a lot more violence. That's why I appreciate what Jennifer Lynch brought to the table because, my one comment on that being I really wish that there was a bit more of a incisive comment being made about the male gaze in order to really hammer home the subversion of it.
What's your takeaway theme message?
A man's obsession can ruin a woman's life. That's why I'm kind of bummed that there aren't really consequences that he pays because again,
What
we're just being told the same story of look at this obsessed person and look at how he destroyed these women's lives.
what kind of consequence would you have wanted?
Something more serious than him waking up. I don't know. I'm just saying it's an interesting final take that if you're trying to make a movie that's commenting on all of this and in the negative, then perhaps you build in consequences for the guy who does this, or at least make it more grim. I don't know. I would have to sit and really think about how I would end it.
I think the
But I
movie
can tell you why people are uncomfortable with the ending.
the movie ends with her waking up in the hospital. She turns towards us, and for a moment, her eyes hit the lens, and then, but basically it's Helena looking at us. It's reflecting like my pain is your pain. We're all going through this, and then he wakes up, and again, removing those two lines definitely helps. But the feeling is that the story is going to continue on past the credits. What happens if these two ever see each other again?
Oh yeah, if I were her, I would go to Mexico. No problems making a hasty retreat to some place far away from Dr. Nick Cavanaugh.
Something Jennifer Lynch could have done. I'm glad she didn't do it, considering that the second half is a dream, right? She could have had Nick go on a killing spree, and like anytime someone came to the house and got near Helena, he'd have to like kill them.
There are a couple parts where I was afraid that was like on the table,
Well, we've
where
seen a lot of movies.
yeah, I've seen a lot of movies, and she was very good at building tension whenever Nick was having to explain himself. She's very good at building tension. So there is a
Right.
lot of tension in these scenes, especially when you're like, "Oh my god, is he going to get caught?" And then you're like, "Why do I care if he gets caught?" Like
But I thought it was a smart decision because a lesser movie would have had him, because it was a dream, you could get away with it by having him kill off Kurtwood Smith, a bunch of other people that came,
which
anyone
I
who
was
came to the
super
door.
afraid of was going to happen. I'm like, "Oh my god."
I think it was definitely, something she wanted to concentrate on, not make it a bloody, gory movie, because it could have easily just been one of those films, and then
Oh yeah. I mean, we could have seen him hacking her limbs off and all that stuff. It could have been a bloody mess, and she did not go for torture porn or gore porn.
well, I remember this movie when it came out. I remember it feeling a bit longer. Like it's funny how you're saying like for you it felt too long, and for me I felt like it moved quicker on this watch than it did when it first came out. It felt, I don't know, it felt like a 2 hour 20-minute movie when I was younger, and now it felt like a 100-minute movie, which is more or less what it is. So I was amazed that it was moving as fast as it did, and like I said, I thought everything aged better. This is definitely a movie, in my opinion, that when they eventually release it on 4K and Blu-ray, it will get a reappraisal. I think there's enough.
Well,
Stuff in it.
I hope that they have the commentary on it, because I would watch that. I would love to hear Jennifer Lynch's thoughts on all of these scenes. It's, it's an interesting story for somebody at her age to tackle, especially at that time. The 90s were a hard time to be a feminist. I'm just gonna say that.
Well,
Feminism wasn't great, and yeah, it was a rough time after Anita Hill and all that.
what a bold, crazy movie to come out with as a young woman, as
Yeah,
a
this is what you come
director,
out the gate. This is great coming out of the gate.
right?
Wow.
And and yet 30 years later, I look back and I go, did they really think? Did Orion Pictures really think this was gonna do well at the theater? I can't imagine a world in which you release this unless you put it in like 4 theaters in America and tour it across the country, than a wide release. Like,
Yeah,
this
it
is
very much reminds me of some of the art house indie stuff I watch.
oh, absolutely, and that's where I saw it, but, they did a fairly wide release for this movie, and this is not a movie that you would be like, "Coming this Friday, Boxing Helena," but I think they were counting on the Lynch name,
Right.
and we
Right.
got Audrey Horne in it, right?
Hmm. Oh,
Um,
definitely was, in the Lynchverse, right?
does
Yeah.
this movie do better with Ed Harris and Kim Basinger?
No. I don't know that I don't know that it's more watchable with Ed Harris and Kim Basinger.
I like Ed Harris and Kim Basinger, and they've done independent, low budget films before. If you look at Boxing Helena and imagine them in this movie, I think it's a completely different movie than Julian Sands and Sherilyn Fenn.
Ed Harris getting super obsessed over somebody is going to be a little bit more creepy than even Julian Sands brings. Like, Julian Sands brings a different creepy. Ed Harris's creepy would be like, how I said you felt danger when people were coming in and talking to him, like, oh my God, he might kill him. Okay, if it was Ed Harris, it would feel like for sure Ed Harris would kill them.
Ed
Like the intensity that Ed Harris can bring to a role just feels like it would be too palpable for
and
it to
Ju-
be effective.
and Julian Sands feels like, even though he's a surgeon, he feels like a 7-year-old in a man's body.
And I like that. I appreciate that he brought that kind of physicality of a child to his role, because you hit on something that I saw in him, that he never really grew out of that. So his obsession in preparing for surgery, his obsession in preparing for the party, like scrubbing his nails and all that, it's all played very well to the child in him, this neglected child. I don't know that at the type of performance that Ed Harris would give this material would play as well against Helena.
Or Ed Harris and Madonna. Like,
That would be even weirder. Okay, I can't. Okay, I don't think Madonna brings the vulnerability to the role either. Like, she would just lean into the cruelty of it. I think that, thank goodness it was Sherilyn Fenn, because the vulnerability she does manage to bring in those moments where we see like her eyes widen a little bit, or indications that she realizes the sorts of danger that she's in. Those are so important, and I don't think Madonna would have given those glimpses. And like I said, I would have loved more glimpses at Helena. I understand why we didn't get them. I'm saying, as a viewer, I would have appreciated them more. Might have made me feel a little bit more close to her. But with Madonna, I wouldn't have felt that at all. And the star power Madonna would bring to the role it would be very hard for her to overcome that when she's being looked at as an object.
yeah, I think this movie, you may disagree, but I think this movie with like 30 more minutes where it explored some of the material we were talking about would in a way make the film feel shorter for maybe you, because like if by exploring the material more,
Yeah,
it would.
I don't disagree. Like, it's either too long or too short. Um, but something hasn't been explored enough for me to feel satisfied with the length.
Mhm.
So it could have used a B story that maybe would have echoed and reflected the A story that was going on. Maybe something that he was having problems with a statue installation at his freaking massive house or something. I don't know. Some story that would somehow shadow this story and show him behaving in a way that would give us an idea of how this situation would play out, or maybe a story about Helena's past, that she's hallucinating while she's, being plied with drugs and having bits cut off of her. There are things that could have been added in that would have made that length feel more earned. I just think the amount of story that we got told in the time that we got felt a little too thin. So yeah, I could actually see more time making it better.
We've talked about the fact that he's playing it as a young kid that got stunted. The fact that towards the end of the film, like, you keep hearing "I hate you," and it shows him as a little boy. The fact that
saying that his mother apparently talked to him like that, which is severe emotional neglect and is going to cause trauma.
So the more Helena treats him like dirt, the more he's attracted to her, in a way.
Well, and the more that she's putting him into this arrested state, that she's putting him into an emotional flashback to where he's incapable of dealing it with, because he's reverting to his child self.
Right.
Like, the psychology is good.
Helena is an island unto herself. We don't see her interact with any women. The nicest male relationship she has in the movie that's not is the market
grocer
guy.
Yeah,
the grocer. And it's a transactional relationship, right? Like, I'm gonna give you money, you give me this stuff. Everything else is like she's taking from Ray, she's taking from Nick, she's taking from Russell, whatever. Everybody in this movie is using each other, ghosting each other, rude to each other. And that's why I kept thinking, God, I don't remember this movie being this angry. And it's full of rage, this movie. Because this movie didn't do well, obviously it took a long time for Jennifer Lynch to get another movie off the ground. I think it was like 15 years or so.
Well, and that's what really sucks, because she's obviously talented at visual storytelling, and it sucks that this put a damper on her career for a bit.
It also sucks is that she's a female director in Hollywood, because a male director could have bombed with 2 movies and still got another one within 5 years, and she had to wait 15 years before she got to do Surveillance.
Yep.
Yeah, I would love to see this material revisited again from an older person's perspective. So and I would love also to see a 4K restoration of this movie in its director's cut. But I do think it's a much better film than anybody gives it credit for.
I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I don't think that it deserves any kind of hate. I just, all of my complaints with it seem to be small things that I would do to tighten it up. It does not deserve to be treated the way that I've read it online. That's a little ridiculous.
Right. I mean, I don't see anybody talking about it's female rage versus male impotence in a feature film.
Well, and I don't know that it's a shame, because, like I said, it was made at a time where feminism sucked. It was non-inclusive and very white woman driven feminism, and just not great. It was tackling some difficult material, and like I said, I wonder how Jennifer Lynch would treat it now, with more experience and wisdom, and what kind of sensibility she'd bring to the table if she made this story again. I don't think that it deserves the sort of hate and spite that people seem to throw at it online.
It really is quite a movie for a 20-year-old female director to be like, here's my calling card, Boxing Helena. It's like, all right.
Right, here's my first movie. That's extraordinary. And the fact that she also wrote it is also really great.
All right. Well, on that note, let's wrap it up. Follow Jamie on Twitter here. As for us, you can follow us on Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Email us anytime at obnoxious@anonymous@hotmail.com. I hope there's a release for Boxing Helena soon, because as far as I know, it's not available on streaming unless you go through some bootleg sites. There is a DVD. The Laserdisc is the director's cut, and some cool extras as well. So let us know what you think of this film, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. Hopefully you check it out before you watch this. And
I hope you watched it before you listened to us talk about everything that happened in it.
Absolutely. And if you haven't seen it in a while, I would suggest a rewatch. I like I said, I think it's aged much better than you may have remembered it. So, all right, guys, have a wonderful day. Give this video a big thumbs up if you haven't already, and subscribe, and we will see you soon. Take it easy. Take care. Bye-bye.